Hey guys, it's your host Julian. This week I'm joined by the great Rob Renzetti to chat his time on Samurai Jack. I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons that help support this podcast. Bill, Brent, Bryce, Eight-Legged Bird, Jacob, and Jordan. Thank you all so much for your support. It truly means a lot. If you want to become a member of our Patreon channel to help support this show and get all these episodes early and ad-free, follow the link below and sign up today. Now, let's get to that chat with Rob. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cartoon Chronicles podcast. I'm your host, Julian, and today I'm joined by Mr. Rob Renzetti. Rob, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Julian. How are you? I brought a special guest along today since we're talking about Samurai Jack.
We got Aku
Yeah,
today, man.
I wish I could do Aku's voice, but nobody can do Aku's voice.
That
But
is
here he
cool.
is, a little memento for my time on Samurai Jack. So
Was that a crew gift, or did you guys
yeah,
pick that up in the shop?
I mean, Cartoon Network back in the day, and I don't know if they're still doing this. They used to be great with internal, like they had a whole internal products
Uh,
division. So they would just do stuff. I think this might have become commercially available. They did some Samurai Jack figures that they sold, but a lot of stuff they would do would just be internal for us only. But I think this was actually something that was available. They tried to do like a toy push at the beginning of Jack. I don't know how successful it was, but this is a he spins. He'll spin if you
oh,
wind
that's
him.
pretty dope,
I don't know if this will work. If I wind him up, will he start spinning? Yeah, he will.
dude. That is so
There
dope.
you go.
That
So,
is so
anyways,
fucking cool, ladies and gentlemen.
no
For if you
no
guys are
voice,
listening, check out the
unfortunately. It'd be
video.
great if you had Michael's voice in there, but no, it's just. But yeah, that's a little one of my little toys. Anyways, all
Oh,
right,
that's really
Aku,
cool.
you stay off. Keep your mouth closed, huh?
The only things that I've got so far is some of the Funkos that they did when they did season five a couple years back. So
Yeah.
I would have loved, especially being a kid when this one was coming out, if they would have done a lot of merch. A lot of those Cartoon Network shows, they just didn't have a lot of merch. They did, but it
No,
was
they'd
one of those
not.
flash in the pans, come and
But
gone.
we did get stuff that nobody ever got, and then there's some cool stuff, and you can get it, of course, secondhand now. It's out there on the internet. But yeah, this I think was actually commercially available, but honestly, like I've said already, much of what we talk about today will be through the haze of a very bad memory. So
That's all right, man. The one question I got before we hit, or not before we record, because we already hit record, but before we get started into the Samurai Jack talk, a lot of folks that obviously you guys, celebrate the Christmas, the holidays, the Thanksgivings,
Mhm.
and then that was a time where you guys would get a lot of the crew gifts too, for like Christmas gifts and stuff like that. Was there anything that you can remember that they kind of gave you Samurai Jack centric for Christmas? Does anything stick out?
No,
They do
no. I
anything?
mean, it could have been this. I
Yeah.
don't know, honestly. It was nothing Christmas centric. No, the gifts,
No.
if we got gifts, they were never usually based around a holiday, even if they were
Mhm.
at holiday time. But yeah, they do a lot of cool stuff. I'm looking up here on my shelf. I don't really have anything else from the time. I may have the Powerpuff bobbleheads, but I think those were commercially available as much Powerpuff stuff was. I do have Samurai Jack, like a big doll, but he's in
Mhm.
a drawer right now. He's not on display, so I swap out the display every once in a while, and he's in a. So I can't unearth him right now, but yeah, there's some pretty cool stuff out there, but a lot of it is in storage. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't remember anything being holiday specific, though they may have done something like that.
Who knows, ladies and gentlemen, hit the comments below if you got pictures of anything out there. All right,
Oh
man.
yeah,
So
please.
your name came across. Obviously, you've been on the show before. I think this is your third time now. Your name came across when I was talking with Mr. Chris Mitchell. You actually directed one of the episodes that Chris had boarded on, and that was Aku's Fairy Tale. And we'll talk about that one in just a little
Hmm.
bit. So let's take it way back, man. Obviously, you know Gendy, you know Craig, you know all the guys from the Cal Art days, and all the
Yeah.
guys and gals from the Cartoon Network days. So how do you find out about Samurai Jack? How do you start working on Samurai Jack? You remember anything about that time?
Well, I'd come back. I've been there. Obviously, been at Hanna when it was Hanna-Barbera before it was Cartoon
Hmm.
Network. We were doing Dexter's Lab, and then I got the opportunity to go to Nickelodeon to possibly do some pilots and get my own show up and running, which through a very circuitous route, which I think we've probably talked about before,
Hmm.
eventually became Teenage Robot. But while I was gone, they moved on to did Powerpuff, and I did a little bit of work freelance on Powerpuff. And then Gendy and Craig both were like looking for what their next show was going to be. And actually, I came back to Cartoon Network and was working. I'll never get the chronology right now because I worked on several things in my second stint when it transitioned from Hanna-Barbera to Cartoon Network. I worked on Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends,
Hmm.
Craig's second show. and I also worked on Whatever Happened to Robot Jones with Greg Miller, and I worked on Samurai Jack. But I think Samurai Jack was the last thing I worked on before I left again because I was working on Samurai Jack when my show Teenage Robot got picked up at Nickelodeon. While I was away from Nickelodeon, it got picked up. So I left Samurai Jack to go work on Teenage Robot. So that was my kind of second period or my first period of Cartoon Network, which Hanna-Barbera Cartoon Network, they're the same thing in my head. Because even when it was Hanna-Barbera, we were making Dexter to appear on Cartoon Network. But anyways, when it became officially Cartoon Network Studios, I came back to work with Craig on Foster Son for Imaginary Friends, and we were also working with the development team, the two of us. And Gendy was developing Samurai Jack at the time, so I got to see the original like animation, test animation, which was kind of a proof of concept that he did. I saw that, everybody at the studio got a chance to see that, and it was very exciting. And when it got picked up to become a series, I was kind of winding down on Foster's, and Gendy was looking for directors, and so he asked me if I would direct on the show, and I said, of course, I'd love to. I did that. I became a director on the show, and you'll see in the credits as is directed by me and directed by Gendy. That's a convention that we used. We were doing different, different jobs, very different jobs. Gendy's much more impressive than mine. Gendy's was basically supervising the whole show, was supervising every episode, looking at coming up with helping, doing the stories, coming up with them, handing them off to a board team, telling the board team what they want, getting the board pitched to him making his notes on the board, him after they've turned in the final board, making other changes and stuff. And then it finally would come to timing. And that was how I would add my direction. I was the timing director, basically, which means I would take the board and I would tell the sheet timer, who is Robert Alvarez in most cases, who I know you've talked with, how to do the exposure sheets. And this is all very stupid technical stuff. If people are really interested in it, they could probably look this up on the internet somewhere. But basically, I'm basically just like saying, well, in this scene, Jack's gonna, every episode basically starts with Jack walking for a while. Almost all of them do. So it's like, well, this scene of Jack walking is going to last for 3 seconds. This scene of Jack walking is going to last for 4 seconds. This scene's only going to be 2 seconds. And he's going to take each of his steps is going to be 12 frames long. So it's those kind of like little dumb animation timing details that was my job that was how I got my directing credit on the Samurai Jack episodes that we're talking about. So basically I was just timing them out. And occasionally I would have an idea that I was like, oh, this isn't quite working. And if I think I wanted to change something either about how the shot was set up, or should it be a close up instead of a long shot, or can we truncate I think this action would be better if it was all in one scene, or I think this action would be better if it was in two scenes. I would either just go to Gendy's office and ask him, or I would put a post-it on it and say, hey, what do you think about this? I'd put a post-it on the board and whatever, because he would look at the slug as well before it would go to sheet time and make sure he agreed with it all. And luckily he had me and Randy Myers and Robert Alvarez. We were all doing timing direction. And he had worked with all of us before and trusted our timing. So I don't think he had a lot of changes to make on any of our stuff, but I'm pretty sure he would have looked at it and improved it. So if I thought something needed to be changed, I thought something wasn't working, I would just leave him a post-it, and he would either change it himself, or he would send it back to me and say, yeah, make that change or whatever. So that was my job as a director on Samurai Jack. That was probably more answer than you were looking for, but there you go.
Nope, nope, nope. I love in-depth answers, man, because like it does with most of the questions I ask, it always leads to something new. Now, with you talking about popping post-it notes in there for any kind of note for Gendy, or if you were working with Randy or Robert or anything like that, um, who would be responsible for doing, I'm assuming maybe the storyboard artist would be, and I don't know the name, but it would be like panels, like think of like a comic book, but panels coming
Mhm.
across the screen, and it would show different perspectives of what was
Oh
going
yeah, you're
on. One
talking
of the
about when we did
shots,
like split screen stuff where there's more
yeah,
than one frame on screen at one
yeah.
time.
Who would
That would be
dictate
the
that?
board. That would be the board artist, and that was a stylistic thing of the show that was very prevalent, obviously.
Mhm.
And that comes, there's a lot of influences and stuff that we looked back on that we like that kind of style. It's definitely I think it definitely harkens back to Japanese cinema and to anime and to there's other Western sources where you see that kind of split screen action, especially in trying to figure out when I think the technology for that kind of came in around the 50s or 60s where they were able to actually be able to composite different images together on
Mhm.
screen at the same time. So I did a little bit of that in my own work. We didn't do too much on Teenage Robot, but I've done it occasionally as well myself. But yeah, it's a stylistic thing that we all liked. But that would be the board artist's decision. The board artist really was steering the ship in terms of the story on Samurai Jack. Like they would get it similar to what we did on Dexter and Powerpuff and stuff, and on my show Teenage Robot. You get like as a board artist, you get like an outline, like maybe 2 or 3 pages long. It doesn't tell you, it just tells you the basic the basic arc of the story, what the characters are thinking, what the character's position is, where they are at the beginning, where they are at the end in terms of their emotional resonance or whatever. But what the action's going to be, all the action set pieces and stuff. But it wouldn't give you all the details of like what are the shots are going to be, what's all the dialogue. That's as a board artist, just kind of up to you to come up with that stuff. Now, dialogue's a little easier on Samurai Jack because there's long
Very little.
stretches of silence where nobody's talking. So, but when the dialogue does kick in, and there are, like Aku's Fairy Tales is obviously a much heavier dialogue
Mhm.
episode. So all that dialogue's being written by most of it is being written by the board artist. Maybe occasionally, if there's a super, super important piece of dialogue, it might be written into an outline. But generally speaking, all the dialogue, that's up to the storyboard artist to figure out. All the shot choices, that's up to the storyboard artist. All those multiple shot choices where you're seeing multiple images on screen at a time, that's the board artist.
Now, something that hit me last night when I was watching a couple of these episodes again was the music that was playing.
Hmm.
I've had a few of the composers on for a couple different shows, and they always say it's literally like the last thing that's added to a show before it's essentially goes off to the studio or to get shown.
Yeah.
Are they telling you, because each, I don't have to tell you this because you worked on the show, but it's like every background for this series is different. There's not like, other than in the same episode, there's not like one episode that is the same from each episode to episode. I mean, he could be in Cold Frigid, he could be in Western,
Hmm.
he could be on top of a train, he could be in a
Hmm.
Jetsons like super futuristic world. So musically, when you guys are, obviously you don't do the music and you don't do the scoring and stuff like that, but are you guys like being told like, hey, this is kind of the vibe we're going to? Because I know music and art plays such a very collaborative form, like so it gets you in the mood to do certain things. Maybe it might affect your art style some, but do they tell you kind of like what they're aesthetically going for musically
No, I
before you
mean,
do the timing?
I think the aesthetics in terms of that, the visuals always would lead the music. So
Okay.
the music is done at the end. And I wasn't involved in that. Gendy would spot what they call spot the show with his composer, which I think is James Venable on
Hmm.
the show. And you know, he would basically go over to James's place and show him the episode, and they would talk about music. Now, rhythm, of course, plays a part in that. Composers for animation are really good at getting stuff to work rhythmically and musically with visuals that they really don't have any say over. There may be some instances on this show where Gendy started with the music and timed to the music, meaning he would make sure the shots were the amount of time so that like if there's cuts, they're happening on the beat and whatever. But generally speaking, the way we would time stuff would be you'd want to be on what we call on the beats, like, either 8 frames or 12 frames, or you'd establish a rhythm of things so that that's something the composer can use.
Hmm.
If you kind of plan it visually, rhythmically, the composer usually has a easier time um, hooking into that and making something that's going to be pleasing in terms of the music. And then in the middle, in the middle of, it depends on the sequence too. Like sometimes the music doesn't really need to catch all the cuts or all the action, and sometimes that can feel a little bit too either frenetic or too on the nose. And of course, there are also large sequences where there is no music, and that gives them a break. But like in the beginning of the Monks episode, where it's just kind of all there's a lot of sound effects and just wind
Hmm.
effects, and you know what I mean. Like, or maybe I'm thinking actually of the Scotsman episode where like he's just walking towards this
Cross the bridge.
ginormous bridge and then onto the bridge, and I don't know if there's any music in an episode until we hear the Scotsman's bagpipes, but
Hmm.
so just also you design the episode so that it's not wall-to-wall music because that's not pleasing either. Yeah, so yeah, the visuals usually lead, the music usually has to follow the visuals, but especially on a show like Samurai Jack, there's definitely an effort to make the two meld in a pleasing way by how you time things and how the final edit looks and all that kind of stuff. Because after we time it and send it overseas, it'll come back, and then Getty would go in with the editor and tighten things up and make sure that they're working in a rhythmic way that makes sense to him and stuff. So, that also helps get it into a position where it's going to be easy for the composer to do their job.
Now, when you're sending things, like obviously this is a long time ago, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm pretty sure you won't be able to give me an exact date, but when you send something across or overseas at that time, how quickly are you guys getting it? Are you guys getting back a full episode? Are you guys getting it back in chunks when you send it over to be animated?
I don't
Like how
remember.
would
I
that
think they
work?
usually would send the whole episode back. And I don't think they would send, even though it's a half-hour episode. So it's
Hmm.
possible they would send, occasionally they would send stuff back early that they were like, hey, we know this is important. We want to make sure we're doing it right. How does this look?
Hmm.
So they might send test scenes back. If this is not a specific example because I can't remember, but like say there was an episode where it's going to be like wall-to-wall horses, like it's Jack out west and he's got to rustle these horses or whatever. Like if we're like we do a very stylized horse and we want a stylized gallop to it, we might do some test animation scene here, or we might ask them, hey, how are you going to animate these horses? Can you send us an example so that we can have some feedback before you animate 200 scenes with these horses and we don't like what you've done? So they might do something like that where they'd send us like, hey, this is what it looks like. What do you think? And then we have an opportunity to give them notes before they go ahead and animate that one thing 200 times over. But normally we would just get the full episode back. And Gendy had experience working with Rough Draft
Hmm.
on both Dexter and Powerpuff, and he knew the directors he liked, and he basically asked for certain directors to be working on Samurai Jack, and I think for the most part, he got them. He got the directors he wanted, so he really made the overseas investors um, invested in this show, and I think they got front end credit as animation. I don't know what their exact. I think it might be animation directors.
It was
Um,
animation directors or
yeah,
overseas
they
animation directors.
oversees animation director. Okay, so
Yeah.
so that's unusual for them to get that kind of front end credit. And Gendy made he said, I want these people, I want them to really take possession and ownership of
Hmm.
these episodes, and I'm going to give them front credit on the show so that their name will be, prominent in a way that hasn't been before. So, um, they did go the extra mile for us in terms of the animation. It was a very stylized show, and it's hard to know um, how you handle that exactly, how you move the characters and stuff. It's not cartoony. It's a different, it is, but it's a little different than Dexter or Powerpuff looks like, and it's not. It's more restrained, but at the same time, it has to be stylized and has to be simple. So, they did a really fantastic job in terms of being able to basically create a new style and follow it through and be really consistent and really solid in terms of how the characters look and how they animate.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's so many people have heard me talk about this show ad nauseum. I'm pretty sure they're tired of hearing me talk about it. But I mean, this is, in my opinion, this is like the greatest thing to ever come out of Cartoon Network Studios. I mean, it's just the style from Scott Wills to Craig
Hmm.
Kellman to Dan Kroll to yourself, like all these people, all these you guys and gals that have touched this show. I mean, I this is the bar. Right. So for anime, right, the bar for me is Cowboy Bebop. For
Hmm.
cartoons on our side of the American cartoons, it's Samurai Jack, man. It's like that's the bar that's set. Um,
Sure. I
you had
understand.
mentioned something earlier that I wanted to circle back to. You said if you wanted to like test something to see what it would look like, you would ask them, or you might have like an in-house animation group of folks to animate maybe something small. Do you know
Yeah.
who that might have been? Would it have been some of the board artists that might have animation,
I mean, it could be
credentials,
anybody. It
or?
could be Gendy doing it. It could be, it could have been Paul.
Mhm.
I don't know how often this happened. I'm kind of just speculating here. There is one guy, who's in the credits on the third episode, the Monks episode, Jim Smith.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
He was what was called back in the day a Spumco Big Shot, and
Hmm.
rest in peace. He just recently passed away,
Yeah.
so it's a real loss for our industry. But Jim Smith was brought in second season basically to do special poses and to lay him out basically. Um, so there's like a lot of these climbing scenes in the monk episode where like uh they're really well drawn and they're
Hmm.
really well posed. And of course the board artists on that episode were also very, very strong. Was it I think Chris Mitchell again,
Hmm.
Eric Weiss, Charlie Bean, they're all great artists.
Yes.
But they've got to do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of drawings
Hmm.
to get the board done. So they give you a strong start, and then we normally would just send them overseas. But Jim came in and he did like basically did like again he hired him basically to do like kick-ass jack poses basically to like really so in that episode, like there's these difficult angles on Jack where he's climbing, and all of a sudden you'll see he's got like this boom muscular calf muscle or whatever. I'm like, yeah,
Hmm.
that's a Jim Smith drawing. That Jim did that and sent it overseas, and it's like this is what you use for this scene. Do this. Jim had a very specific role on the show while he was there, and it was to do that kind of stuff to like plus the board drawings and send those overseas, basically do layouts for them, so that like the stuff that Gendy really wanted to look special got like extra attention and stuff. So he wasn't necessarily doing animation, but he was doing like layout and giving them really strong
Yes.
poses to work off of. That I know for sure. As far as like if we did any of that kind of test, I mean, I think some of the stuff when they did that first initial test, I'm pretty sure some of those that animation was probably done at Cartoon Network by Paul and Gendy. I forget who else worked on that original test animation, but they probably did some animation in there before they sent it overseas. I'm sure of that.
Got you. And thank you for bringing up Jim because I actually forgot to mention this before we hit record because obviously whenever somebody passes away within this industry and especially when they've touched shows just like, Samurai
Hmm.
Jack, just for instance, I mean, Jim Smith, you can go, ladies and gentlemen, look at his credit. I implore you to go look at his credits. I mean, the man had done some very great work throughout his entire career. But there's two people in particular that I intentionally saved Chris Riccardi, but I
Hmm.
also, Jim Smith too. So do you have any stories with both of those gentlemen? That maybe it was just like you get to hang out and meet them or talk with them or anything like that, that when you ever think of those two names, those are the stories.
I barely talked with Jim. He
Yeah.
was very I did know him before he came on Samurai Jack, and
Mhm.
he pretty much stuck to his desk and drew all the time. So I don't have any Jim Smith stories. Riccardi I know well.
Yeah.
Not I mean on Samurai Jack he worked on Teenage Robot as well. We weren't really
Hmm.
buds. We didn't hang out outside of work very much. Though I did go to a few parties he had at his place with Lynn Naylor. Um, I've been to a couple of New Year's parties at their place, Christmas parties and stuff back in the day. Uh, Chris was a character. He's really we worked very closely together on the Cartoon Institute, which was the shorts program
Hmm.
Craig and I spearheaded, which was another time when I was at Cartoon Network. We did that. And it was he was really funny. He's just a strange guy. You never quite know if he's being serious or not whenever he says, and he says a lot of outrageous stuff, and you're not quite sure whether he's being serious or not, but there's always like kind of this mischievous twinkle in his eye. So you've got to assume that he's taking the piss to one degree or another whenever you're talking with Riccardi. So yeah, no, Chris was a great guy, very, very talented, had a very, very, very strong particular style. It's a shame he never got a chance to do his own show. We were trying to give him the chance for that on Cartoon Institute, but it didn't go forward. Nothing much from his it didn't go forward, though we loved it. But yeah, he was a lot of fun, and again, it's a tragedy that he died so young and that he's gone already. Um, but yeah, he is also part of the Spumco royalty that started that company and kind of branched out,
Hmm.
and yeah, did a lot of stuff. Had a large impact. Was doing amazing, like doing kind of his own amazing freelance work outside of animation. Like I think he had this he'd done this like he was doing like work on at Vegas, like helping to style hotels and stuff. Like I mean, he was really branching out and doing amazing things when he passed away. But yeah, he was fun. I can say that we were good friends, but we were work friends, and
Hmm.
I do miss him being in the world. Again, it's sad that he's gone so soon.
That he is. And then one more name, and then we'll rotate back to Samurai Jack because I don't think her name gets brought up enough. It got brought up when we talked about her pretty extensively with my Chris Mitchell episode. Lynn Naylor, you can
Yeah,
spot, much like Chris Riccardi, you can spot his artwork. You can spot her artwork from a mile away. I think she's one of
yeah.
the most underrated artists, especially when it comes to the Cartoon Network sphere. Doesn't get brought up enough. Very quiet on the front of interviews and stuff like that. So, there's not too
She's
much out
she's
there
a
with
quiet
her.
she's a quiet she again she like Chris is kind of uh running at her own speed.
Hmm.
She's very interesting. Very loves to laugh when you
Yeah.
meet her when you talk to her at a party or she seems she's kind of quiet around strangers but kind of friendly to the people she knows.
Hmm.
Very sweet. Again, worked with her on several different projects, including my own show and she was on Samurai Jack and doing some stuff and doing other stuff on other projects. Yeah, she's just really, really talented. Yeah, again, someone who like is more behind the scenes than some
Hmm.
of the names that kind of put themselves out there, but like really instrumental in terms of the look of Spumco, especially the girls in the Spumco universe, and just amazingly talented individual. And she is, after Chris passed away, they were a couple.
Yeah.
She was hit hard by that, and she's off in the desert now somewhere. She's kind of left California and moved and supposedly doing really well, but I haven't seen her in a while either. With the pandemic and everything after that, she's been gone for a while. But I hear about her through mutual friends, and she seems to be doing well, enjoying life, and she's kind of doing a Georgia O'Keeffe thing. I think she's doing more
Yeah.
personal art stuff in the desert now. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if she's still doing any cartoon work right now or not.
I don't know if she's got a credit to it or anything like that in most recent years, but I've seen some of her art pop up. The name will come back to me here in just a second. But Miles Thompson, I just
Oh
talked
yeah,
to him not too long ago, a few weeks back about Lynn and just saying, tell her thank you. If anything, just tell her thank you for giving me something to just look at and admire and just
yeah,
enjoy all of her work back in the
yeah.
day.
She's
So,
one of those artists that other artists are jealous of.
oh, and
Like
as they
her
should
talent
be.
is like, oh my God.
Yeah, that it is. So, recipes Jim, recipes Chris, and then shout out to Lynn, man.
Yeah.
So getting it back to Samurai Jack. Now, the last question I got here before we rotate into these episodes. I can't remember who told me this. It might have been Randy Myers or it might have been Brian Andrews. Both people have worked on, both people have been on the show and then
Mhm.
both people have worked on these Samurai Jack episodes. The Scotsman, one of the ones we'll talk about in particular was the Andrew brothers, Brian and Mark. Now,
Yep.
they told me that Gendy was really good at pairing like comedy with comedy, action with action. Obviously, Brian was really, really into martial arts, so he could do
Hmm.
all of these poses for all of these different martial arts.
Yeah.
Would Gendy have that same approach with his timing directors like yourself and other directors? He would pair you guys like comedy directors with comedy board artists?
No, he didn't. We worked on whatever episode was next in the rotation, which was fine because
Gotcha.
both, all of us were able to do comedy, able to do the fight stuff. If the fight stuff's posed out for you, it's not that hard to,
Mhm.
it's not that hard to time. Usually, I occasionally have to do extra sketches for something that when a pose would be missing in the board, but usually that wasn't that often. The board artists were really good. They did a crap ton of work
Mhm.
and did it in a very quick manner, and the episodes are usually pretty easy to figure out in time. But if there was a pose missing that I needed, I could either just sketch it out myself or go back to them and ask them to add it. But normally we get a board, it was in good shape. But in terms of comedy versus action, we did everything. And this was kind of the most actiony show I'd worked on up until that point. But there's always action elements, and in Dexter, believe it or not, and
Mhm.
Powerpuff. I mean, they all had we all had our action moments in those
Oh yeah.
scenes, and we're doing cartoony action. You know what I mean? So it's still stylized in terms. It's very simple. You just break everything down into its smallest parts and figure out how the timing should work. Um, and it was I don't if you're a good timer, you know how to do either kind of thing and know what the timing should be. On interestingly, we never do animatics on Dexter or Powerpuff or Samurai Jack or Foster's or any of these classic Cartoon Network shows. Animatics are now on every show, but back in the day, we just went off of our gut. We listened to the dialogue track and just timed it out as we thought it would work. And usually we're close to hitting the mark.
Oh, you guys hit the mark. Don't sell yourselves short, man. I mean, you guys absolutely crushed it. Now, for you personally, which one did you feel more at home at? Was it more the comedy centric? Did you like a lot of the action? Was action stretching a muscle you probably didn't get to use too often? But where
I
did you
mean,
feel most at home at?
at first action was a bit of a stretch, but with the action in Samurai Jack is of a piece, like
Mhm.
most of the stuff. The instinct was to do stuff too fast on Samurai
Mhm.
Jack because we're used to doing 7-minute cartoons, 11-minute cartoons, not doing 22 minutes and 22 minutes that are paced, rather slowly, like very deliberately at the end. It's usually very slow at the beginning of an
Mhm.
episode because we're going to contrast it later with the fast action stuff that comes later. So I would usually go back and like, oh, I need to add another second to this walking scene, like we were
Yeah.
talking before. Like we got too much time right now. I need to give more time to this stuff because the when it gets fast, it's going to go fast, and I can't rely on Act Three to fill these gaps. I'm going to have to make Act One longer. So, it was kind of like stretching in both directions, like making the slow stuff slower, making the action stuff. Um, Faster and different in a way. Some of the hardest stuff to time was sometimes that abstract stuff where it's all of a sudden like the screen goes black and there's just an abstract, you know, swipe of the sword, which is like
Mhm.
it's just like a white shape. Okay, how do I time this? Like I got one image here. What do the images look like before that? Like,
Yeah.
what are the 2 frames before that? Like, it's okay. The scene's only like 8 frames long, but still, I only have one image, and I don't know what any of the other images are supposed to look like. That took a little bit of getting used to, but eventually we figured out how to do that. And overseas was doing kicking ass with that stuff. So we're like, well, they know what to do at this point. But at first, it was kind of like, wait, what do I do with this? There's the more abstract stuff was kind of like a little bit of a head scratcher for a while, but it didn't take too long to get to understand what we were supposed to do with it.
Yeah.
And then when we would get more cartoony, that was fun to like when the more cartoony characters would come into it. That was more, excuse me, more easy to handle and firmer experience, more experience I had with that. So I was on firmer ground.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, you guys crushed on this one. Now, we got those three episodes in particular. We got the Scotsman, we've got
Yeah,
the three monks, and these aren't the three Shaolin monks, ladies and gentlemen. This is the mountain episode.
Mountain
And then
monks.
we've got the mountain monks, thank you. And then we've got a Coos fairy tale. Which episode would you like to start with?
Let's talk about the Scotsman because I love the Scotsman. So he's one of my favorite characters on the show. So I enjoyed doing that episode. That was a lot of fun. What would you like to ask me about it?
Dude, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was probably obviously they're gonna put the Andrews brothers on there because of their Scottish descent and their Scottish love.
Yeah.
That's them, right? Through
Yes.
and through. So
They
this
probably
might
came
have
up with the
been.
idea for the Scotsman, if I had
Oh,
to
I
guess.
I wouldn't be surprised, man. Like before this, my first introduction to anything Scottish was Groundskeeper Willie, and then the original Babe, right? Because I believe that the farmer was Scottish in that one, right? So that was like my understanding. And I remember seeing this as a little kid going, "Holy shit, that guy's got a gun for a leg." And I'm like, this comes out in 2000, 2001, somewhere around there. Like
Yeah.
I'm 12, 13 years old, give or take, somewhere in that
That's
general
not
area.
part of the Scottish tradition, by the way. Not
No.
having guns as legs
Kill,
is
yes,
not
gun, no.
that's not a Scottish tradition.
But what is it like seeing this? Like you see this big burly redheaded dude, obviously, and the best voice of all time for this character, John DiMaggio, man. Is like I
Uh-huh.
can't
Yeah.
imagine somebody else voicing this character, man.
Yeah, it was a
But
lot of
from
fun.
from the design to how he acted on the screen, just a fantastic character, man. So, do
Yeah.
you remember anything in particular about this? I mean, did
Well,
you guys know it was John before he was going to voice it, or
no,
how does it
no. I
work?
mean, I wasn't in the record for this, but I of course heard the results.
Mhm.
But even when the Andrews brothers pitched it, they were like, they did an amazing job pitching it. I may be just making this up, but I can guess
We'll
that
go
they
with it. We'll
I
go with
can
it.
guess that they probably came dressed in kilts,
God, I hope so.
because they used to dress up in kilts when we were all at CalArts together. So they probably wore kilts for the pitch of this episode. They probably brought bagpipes.
Yeah.
Um, because they went all out. But yeah, pitching this was I remember going to the pitch and it being incredibly funny, especially when they broke into all the
The
Scottish
brogue.
insults, which nobody understood, but which was hilarious. So yeah, it was a pleasure to work on that episode. And then John, of course, killed it when he recorded it. He's
Mhm.
amazing. And he's such a great contrast to Jack. That's one of the reasons I love him because he can't stop talking, whereas Jack usually can't start.
Mm.
And he's everything Jack isn't. He's a braggart. He's he's loud, he's obnoxious, he's quick to anger. Um, he's everything. He's a perfect opposite, perfect foil for Jack.
Hmm.
So I think he serves a great role in the show, and I'm only sorry he didn't come back more often. I thought I loved working on the episode because of him. And of course, I also loved the hillbilly bounty hunters that come into
Oh,
play.
dude,
Um,
Boss Hog was fantastic.
yeah, I would guess that Paul Rudish either did those designs or or helped whoever worked on designs. Those are very
Hmm.
Paul Rudish characters. They scream Paul, and they're just the cherry on top, I guess, with the ice cream sandwich, which or the ice cream dessert that is the Scotsman. So yeah, John did amazing with the voice. Character design is great. Yeah, I love everything about the episode. It's a lot of fun.
Do you remember any possible kickback that might have been around that time with the gun for a leg? Do you remember any kind of conversations that might have been
I have
had?
no idea if there was one. Wasn't privy to it. I don't think usually they left us pretty much alone.
Hmm.
I don't know when Adult Swim came along, but like those instincts were there because Mike Lazo was in charge of Cartoon Network
Hmm.
at the time this show was going on. So he was up for us doing anything like that. And the fact that a lot of characters are robots in the show allowed us to get away with a level of violence that we otherwise wouldn't
Hmm.
have been able to get away with. But you know, I don't remember there being any problem with the rifle leg. Um, and
Gotcha.
he's probably shooting lasers anyways, not bullets. So we got away with a lot because things were lasers instead of real ammunition. So that helped as well.
Gotcha. Now I know we've never talked Mike Laszlo in the two previous episodes, man. Do you got a fun Mike Laszlo story? Do you ever get
I
any
wish I
interaction with
really
him?
didn't know Mike. Gendy and Craig both got to know Mike better. But Mike was a very interesting guy
Hmm.
himself. He was a little bit of a hillbilly himself, just in terms of the he had a very heavy accent, Southern accent, and but really, really smart, really, really sharp.
Hmm.
And kind of had a rebellious attitude towards the whole thing. And because of Cartoon Network's success, he was allowed to do a lot of stuff that if he had been unsuccessful, he probably wouldn't have gotten away with. So, he bet on Gendy and our crew and with Dexter, and that paid off. And then it paid off even more so with Powerpuff. So, Gendy was kind of given a lot of free reign as to what the next show that he would do, having created Dexter's and then having helped supervise on Powerpuff. They were ready to give him a lot of leeway, and so this is what he wanted to do, and this is what he came up with, and it was I'm pretty sure that Mike let him do mostly whatever he felt like
Hmm.
he wanted to do. And we were responsible, I suppose, in the way that, and the gratuitous violence was,
Hmm.
lasers and robots and not humans with blood.
Hmm.
So that, in that regard, we kind of, tried to be a little bit more circumspect than we otherwise could have been, I suppose.
Now, with there being so much time from this episode being released and then you just watching it for the chat we're having now, are you able to watch the things you work on now as like a fan, or do you still see like shit, why didn't I cut it like a half a frame here? Like, are you able to watch it as a fan?
Yeah, more, I mean, more so than with my own stuff, more so with my own shows or my own, like,
Just a
though
lot
I
less
can, I
critically?
can do that as well if there's enough time gone by and I haven't looked at the particular episodes. I have a get enough distance from. So yes, the answer is yes. Like you can get enough distance from this stuff, but it does take a number of years. I'd
Hmm.
say 5 years minimum to
Yeah.
look back on something that you were intimately involved with and be a little bit more objective about it. Both in terms of liking it more and sometimes liking it less, or being like, oh yeah, I thought that was better than it was, or oh yeah, this is better than I remember. So, because every particular thing has its own set of different pains, so to speak, growing pains, creation pains, and
Yeah.
you kind of forget about those, but it does take a little while. So yeah, I can look at this stuff and enjoy them as a fan and not necessarily remember the war wounds, especially Samurai Jack. Again, I was mostly just doing the timing. A lot of the other decisions were not in my hands. So, um, those choices I didn't make in the first place, so it's not hard for me to either endorse those changes or say like, man, that wasn't so great. So,
Yeah. I got you. Now, I'm going to give you an example because I don't really know how to ask this question. So back in the day, I used to ref basketball, and I would
Mhm.
get caught. And I'm such a fan of I love the sport, right? I'd sit there and I watch it, and then my whistle would drop out, and I'm like, "Ooh, I should have. That was a foul right there." Do you remember having a possible moment like that while doing any of the timing for anything you've ever done when it came to Samurai Jack? Was it hard to kind of like, all right, I'm in work mode. I need to be critiquing this for the timing. I need to make sure we've got the editing done. It's cut, it's dry, it's paced. Or are you just a fan of just sitting back watching? Is it hard to kind of, draw that line in the sand of watching and doing work?
No, it's not hard. Wait, hold on. What's going on here? I got a weird light on my shoulder. It's driving me nuts. I'm just gonna look at it the whole time if I don't get rid of it. Come on, drape, close. Um, okay, that's better. Uh, no, it's not because you have your chance to be a fan during the storyboard pitch, which is when
Gotcha.
you kind of see the episode for the first time. And even though I eventually became involved in some of the story meetings, but even if you're involved in the story meeting, you're basically just helping come up with an idea. You don't know what all the
Mhm.
details are going to be, the jokes, all the action sequences and stuff. So you get to be kind of a fan of it when you first see it as a board at the board pitch. And then that's before it comes to you. So when you get it to time on it, you're like, you've already laughed at the jokes, you've already enjoyed the action sequences, and now you can kind of just be analytical about how those things should be timed out. And going to the pitch helps you because you remember what pace things were pitched at, what
Yeah.
how they performed the dialogue, whether it was supposed to be fast or slow or angry or whatever, and so you can bring that into your timing. So you have the chance to be a fan before you get to work on it as a timing director. You don't have to you're not like doing both at the same time.
Got you, man. Thanks for breaking that one down. All right, last question about this episode, and then we'll go on to the next one. What's your favorite part from this entire episode? Does anything stick out?
I mean, it's when the bounty hunters first come in.
Yeah.
I love when they're on the bridge and they've got these machines that are like, basically spanning the whole bridge and like they're just
Hmm.
going to run over Jack and the Scotsman.
Yeah.
There's no way for them to escape, and how they do manage to escape is a lot of fun. But then, yeah, and then when they're down in the initial swamp, so it's kind of those first initial scenes with the bounty hunters when they come in, you kind of get introduced to them and Boss Hogg and his hillbilly henchmen. That's probably my favorite part.
Oh, dude, I love it when, especially when they fall in the water and then you see Jack's hat float by and then the Scotsman laughs and then you
Mhm.
see the bagpipes come by and then Jack laughs. And of course, once you see the Jack poster, because the Scotsman has been just talking shit the
Yeah,
entire
yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah,
the most wanted man, and then all you see is Jack's face on all these posters, man. So
yeah.
fantastic episode. Like I said, this episode is damn near everybody's number one episode throughout the entire series, just because this character is just so
Hmm.
iconic, man. So we've got Aku's fairy tale, and then we've got the mountain monks, man. Which one do you want to go with next?
Well, I mean, let's just do them in the order. I guess Aku's Fairy Tales would come next. Yeah,
Hmm.
because Monks is a season two episode.
So Aku's fairy tale, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about this one with the Chris Mitchell episode.
Yeah, what did
So we're
Chris have
gonna
to
be,
say? I'm curious. What did he have?
oh,
What were
dude,
his
if
tidbits?
if we're gonna be honest, I'd have to go back and listen to that episode because by the time we got to the episodes, the edibles had started to kick in,
Uh-oh.
and
Oh
yeah, well,
my.
it was a good time, but I was just like I was thinking about the episode a little bit too in depth, so I'm like I can't ask that question. I gotta work this back. This is 20 plus years ago at this point, so I do remember him talking about it just being fun because you get to see Aku in a different light, right? You get to see him
Hmm.
just hating Jack the entire time, but then you get to see him be sensitive in a sense, like his ego is hurt throughout this whole episode.
Hmm.
You see him as this big bad, like nothing can hurt him. And then the fact that kids do not want to play him as the character or he's not the hero in the story, it makes him upset, right? So I remember us
Yeah.
talking about it from that aspect. But the finer details, I don't remember, man. But
Well, I
what do
mean,
you
yeah, Aku's
remember
such
from
a
this
great
episode?
character. It's fun to focus on him and
Mhm.
be with him for, basically most of the episode. Yeah, I love the storytelling aspect of it, and of course, and it allows us to all go back to our kind of Hanna-Barbera roots with some of the, like especially with the wolf and the Little Red Riding Hood story,
Mhm.
who's a very much a Hanna-Barbera character from like the 50s or 60s. Also, it's kind of interesting because there's just like a lot of blending of different styles, like Hanna-Barbera, and then Bob Stack, who's a illustrator, a very successful illustrator. Also did some of the designs on this, and you can spot his stuff a mile away. He did the grandma character. The characters that have these like super big noses.
Hmm.
He actually he designed those. Actually, I had him when I went off to Nickelodeon. I had him design a whole one of my shorts, A Cop and His Donut. That pilot that I did was that's Bob Stack style. Like I basically gave him the whole short to design. So he's a really fun graphic illustrator who I think we started working with him on Dexter, and then I used him on Cop and Donut, and then he was doing more work with us on Samurai Jack. So like there's different influences here, which is kind of fun visually to see the different styles come together in the different the silly different fairy tales and Aku going kind of from kind of the first stately myth that he tells with the Greek god flying through the sky and then kind of kind of you know degenerate, if you like, into like silly cartoon antics
Yeah,
with different fairy tales and all that kind of stuff. That was a fun. I think it was a nice break for everybody coming at the end of the first season to kind of just do something that was less serious and less
real
epic and
silly.
just yeah and silly. So I'm sure Chris and it was Carrie Yost who did it. I think the board with him, they must have had a fun time kind of just blowing off steam and changing the pace of things
I'm
to do that.
glad you I'm glad you brought up Carrie because now I remember what we talked about. So,
Uh-oh.
we, ladies and gentlemen, Rob Renzetti here works with Disney right now. He's doing Big City Greens. So, if we have to, Rob, after I tell you the story, you don't want it out there, we can cut it out. It's nothing too
Oh my
crazy.
God, no, it's fine.
So I'm pretty sure it was during this one because I did the same thing I asked you about with Chris and Jim. Obviously, Jim was still around when Chris and I talked. But Chris and I can't remember who the other guy was with Chris, but they all decided to take their drawings and they drew dicks all over their
Uh-huh.
storyboards. So what they didn't realize was they drew it and they did it on post-it notes, so they didn't wreck their original drawings.
Right.
And Carrie and Chris got very angry because who drew dicks all over our stuff? We're gonna get them back. And obviously they found out it was Chris and a couple other guys, so they went and drew on their drawings, not knowing that Chris had did it on post-it notes so they could just lift it up, take it off. So they ended up ruining the pictures, and it was a whole big to-do thing. So that was what we talked about when this episode came up, the dicks that were drawn.
Oh my. Well, I don't remember that. I'm sorry to hear they behaved so badly.
Oh, that's it's I always love stories like that, because you always hear, especially when I have the artists on, you guys will sit there and you guys will do characters of each other and then you pass them around, you try to make each other
hmm
laugh. So it's always funny hearing those stories. But that's what we talked about during Carrie Yost is one of the funniest people I've ever had on this podcast. My face hurt so much, my stomach hurt so much just listening to him. Like he was on the entire time. It was like everything
He's
was a joke. And
yeah,
I'm
he's a
looking
very
at him
funny man.
halfway through and I go, dude, you have to like stop, please. I was like, I can't laugh anymore. My face hurts, man. But great dudes, great stories, man. So with Aku's fairy tale, is there anything in particular? Obviously, you talked about Bob Stack's designs and some of those conflections between Aku's character and him
Mhm.
trying to build his own lore. What was your favorite scene or what was your favorite moment throughout this episode? Anything
Yeah,
stick
I don't
out?
know. I'm probably, I like when he starts getting into the fairy tales, probably the best. But I do like
Mhm,
the first mythic tale that he tells. I really love the style of that with
mhm,
the Greek hero and the dragon that the swallows worlds. That's
mhm,
like the snake dragon that's got the globes throughout its body. Design wise, I thought that was really the height of the episode. I love that stuff. The fairy tale stuff's fun, but it's a little less sophisticated. But I really liked that beginning myth stuff. The other part that I really like is when Akuba gives up and the kids tell their own tale of Jack and how it would actually happen, and they're the silly voices coming out of the image
mhm.
of Jack and Aku was a lot of fun. So that's probably my favorite sequence is just the very end of it because it gives us a chance to see Jack defeat Aku to do the final battle and defeat Aku, which as a viewer of the show, you're never going to get that. You're going to get frustrated because that never is going to come because that's the end of the series. But until the revival, of course, and they actually did it. But it gives you a chance after one season to actually see Jack defeat Aku, even if it's just a fairy tale itself.
Absolutely, and this will be the last thing I say about this episode. With you in particular, you've brought a few shows from conception to the big screen for a lot of us, right? You know, we
Hmm.
talked about those shows in particular and how special they were to me and so many others in the previous two episodes, man. But seeing a show like this episode in particular, where they blended a lot of different styles. Obviously, Samurai Jack is one of the most, if not the most stylized show I think that's probably out there. It's definitely up there at the very least if it's not number one. How difficult for you in particular is it to see so many different styles? Like how hard is that as an artist to blend and it not seem like it's just vomit on a screen, if that makes any sense?
I mean, it's a challenge, but it's not one that I had to go through on this show. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I wasn't a designer on it, but I just would reap the benefits of watching everybody else do all the amazing work they did. I
Hmm.
mean, I think Scott Willis's background style kind of ties everything together in a way, and
Hmm.
kind of even when we're in these very disparate locations in the world, it all feels unified because of this, the particular style he brings to things. So even the characters can be very cartoony at times or very, very serious. I feel like generally they all work together, and you have the opportunity to like kind of focus on one thing per episode, and kind of you can kind of forget what the last episode looked like a little bit and see that you're going to get a little bit of a different look here. So for me it's mostly pleasure. There's mostly not Mostly the characters seem to work together. Of course, I'm probably forgiving because I love cartoons so much that I'm happy to see them in whatever form they take on my screen. So I don't have trouble enjoying Samurai Jack on that level, even when we get super crazy cartoon characters like the talking dogs, early on in was that the first episode or whatever,
Oh yeah, that was
and
the
then the
first two episodes.
more serious stuff. It all works for me. It all is very cool. The monks in the third episode, which we're about to talk about, very, very stylized, but very, very
Hmm.
cool and fun. Um, so it's just kind of knowing how far you can push things before it breaks. But I don't think much feels out of place in Samurai Jack because from the very beginning, we kind of established that this is a very strange future world with lots of different disparate alien entities, and so things are going to be whatever they need to be for the episode.
That it was, and I just want to make sure I clarify, just so nobody takes any kind of slight that I was saying. I think it's fascinating that you guys can take three different styles within one episode and then mash them together, and they all look like holy shit. That definitely goes together.
Yeah,
I,
sure. And
you know
Julian,
what I
you're
mean? So
okay. It's all
beautiful.
right for you to criticize something too.
Oh, I'm
You
not
could
criticizing shit. I love this stuff.
I'm saying it'd be okay if you wanted to.
Oh
You-
yeah, I get that, but it was just I just found it fascinating that especially during Aku's fairy tale, it spoke in like three different stories, but like each story kind of had its own style, and I
Mhm.
thought it was just such a mark of a true craftsman and a master of their craft that they could take three different styles of something within a 22-minute episode and mash them together and it be seamless. I always just thought like, how the hell does somebody do something like that? How hard is that to conceptualize? And how hard is it to keep it on track where it does, like I said, that's where the vomit thing came in, where it doesn't end up looking like vomit. And it
Sure.
didn't look like vomit, but it was just very fascinating because you don't see that in very many shows, let alone in one episode, let alone across the whole series of Samurai Jack. So I just thought it was very fascinating. Like I said, three different styles for three different stories, but it was all
Hmm.
within the same umbrella of Samurai Jack in that episode. Fantastic, fantastic episode on this one. Now, with that being said, the final episode on this one, the Mountain Monks, as you coined it earlier, man. Uh, what was it about this one that you liked, man? Was there a favorite scene, favorite piece of dialogue? Even though there was very little dialogue in this one in
Very
particular,
little
was there a
dialogue.
design that you liked the most? What was
I
it
mean, I
about
love
this
the
one?
monks. I think they're
Yeah.
great design, especially at the
Mhm.
beginning where they're just like this kind of strange, it's
Mhm.
almost like a fancy folded napkin shape,
Yes,
with their triangular tops and then their square bodies.
it was so cool.
I love how over the top stylized they are.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I really love them. I love all the different monsters that he encounters because I'm a big fan of monsters, obviously. Probably which one do I like the best? What's the one? There's the goat boys, the goat men, and then the like rock creature, and then what's the one that's kind of
I wrote some notes down on
the
this
one
one.
that's his undoing that they kind of falls when he's falling basically back down toward the ground, and the creature he's fighting is also
It's like a
falling
wolf.
with him.
It's like a
Is that the
wolf.
mountain guy? might be the mountain guy, I don't know, the rock guy or whatever.
Yeah, the
Oh,
the
and there's
rock
also
guy, he
the
jumped up and down. Like he smashed him into the thing, jumped up when the goat was falling down. He used
yeah,
his
he used a
belt and his
sword to cut off.
sword.
And there's a the Yeti character too, right? The Yeti is the
The
Yeti
Yeti, yes,
character
the
the one
abominable
that did.
snowman.
Yeah, I mean they're all great. And I really did like the sequence where he's falling and then falling down, then bouncing back up and flying, falling down and all
Hmm.
that. Kind of doing all these crazy acrobatics through the air. That's I kind of like that section the best. The ending to me is a little bit of a disappointment. I'm like, we get to the top. Where's the magic? Where is And it's like, oh, the
He
magic
saw the
was
magic
inside
though.
you. Magic was inside you the whole time. I mean, like, okay, all right, all
Well,
right.
I'm glad you brought that up because man, sometimes when I watch these episodes, like I told you, and the edibles kicked in a little too early with Chris Mitchell. Sometimes these edibles kick in a little too early, but they kick in a little too early in the right way. So, you get that whole prelude to like, well, what's at the top? He was like, the answer, essentially. What you're
Right,
seeking is at the top, right? So you can sit there and your mind always does these things where it goes to either the most extreme negative or the most extreme positive. Very rarely does your mind sit there and go rational, right? Unless you're a rational person. Mine, if I get a cough, I'm like, oh shit, do I have lung cancer? Or I get a headache, I'm like, oh my God, this is an embolism. You know what I mean? You start thinking in
sure,
those
okay.
crazy type of things, right? So not realistically, I'm just giving you some like extreme negatives in here, right? Just to make a point. But when I'm watching this episode, right? So you're thinking like Jack thinks like maybe his way home, that's where it's at, right? So he's thinking about these possible ways.
Hmm.
He gets to the top and then he realizes all the trials and tribulations he had to go through to not give up, to get up there
Right,
because he was being tested. He said he will go the distance. He said he will kill Aku. He said he will go back in time. So let me throw every piece of adversity at this guy. Let me sit there and take him down to his core and see if he really means it. Life was challenging him, right? He gets to the top, and that line he has at the end, where I can't quote it, verbatim, but it was something he's like, "I will never quit. I will never stop until
right.
my mission is
Well,
completed."
now,
So he
yeah,
proved to himself.
you have the prologue at the beginning where he's at a gateway and the bug creatures defeat him and destroy
Hmm.
the portal, and he says it's impossible, and then he repeats that line when he's trying to climb the mountain, and
Hmm.
he gets the courage to continue on and stuff. I get all that, I understand it all, but as a viewer, as the kid viewer of me, I'm like, but I want some magic at the top of the mountain. It's like the magic was the mountain, just climbing the mountain. All right, okay, sure, I get it, I understand. All
I,
right.
like I said, I have the what's it called? Fuck, I can't think of the word. I mean, I have this is gonna bother me that not word or not find out that word, but it's just like I loved how it kind of ended. Looking at this as like 36-year-old me, right, through dad eyes, through like like if I would have looked at
Hmm.
this at 11 years old, I'm pretty sure that I could have connected like you were connecting to your inner kid, right? Like I kind of wanted there to be magic up there. I kind of wanted to see some, some cool shit to
Yeah.
go on. But it was just like seeing him go through all of that, right? So I do not know if this episode came out around the time that One Piece, I have to assume it was because One Piece kind of started in 98, 97, or
Mhm.
97, 98, somewhere around there, the anime. And there's a scene in there where, Luffy is climbing to the top of this mountain and he's got his two crewmates with him, Nami and Sanji. And then his whole goal is the doctor is at the top of this mountain. And then he gets like halfway up, something happens, and he slides all the way down, and his nails are being destroyed, blood's coming all over the place, right? But he's carrying his two crewmates, and he gets to the top. He drops them in front. Spoiler, alert, ladies and gentlemen. This is 20 plus years old, so if you haven't watched it yet, that's on you. Um, but he drops the two of his crewmates that are on death's door, right? It's frigid cold. They're not dressed for it. Drops them in front of the doctor, says, please save them. And then he blacks out, right? It had that vibe to it where it was just
Hmm.
like, so I wonder if maybe that was like somebody was watching this and it kind of influenced, something along
Probably.
these
It wouldn't have
lines.
been me because I still haven't seen One Piece, though. I know people like
Oh,
it a lot.
dude, Rob, I
And
know you're
well,
busy as shit. When you got some free time, when you retire, I
when I
need you to
retire,
watch
I'm
some
gonna
One
catch
Piece.
up on all the anime of the last 50 years.
I'm only on
Like,
episode 452 of
oh,
1130,
is that
so I've got
all?
a,
All
that's it.
right.
But it's a fantastic ride. I really
Sounds
feel
like
like
you've
you
been
connect with a
slacking
lot of these
off too, then,
characters.
obviously.
Well, I just started watching it late last year. So I've been
Oh, yeah, we're
slacking off for
supposed to be
20 years.
watching today. What is this?
Well, we would have been a lot further. Like if we would have just watched 3 episodes a day, right, with my oldest son and I, we would have been probably caught up. We started sometime last year. I can't remember when we actually started.
Oh my.
But I did the track where if we did 3 episodes a day, we would be able to catch up to where they were at current within like a year and a half. And I figured 3 episodes is good enough, right? And some days we could hit it, some days we wouldn't. And then with his karate schedule, it's almost impossible, right? So I was like, you know
I
what?
bet.
You can catch up when you've got free time. I'm not waiting for you because I've got age is not on my side. It's not
Oh
helping me
my.
out here.
I
But
hear you.
so
They
that I
probably someone probably was influenced by that. I mean, it's definitely,
it's possible,
it's back in the day. I don't know. Speaking of like the sliding down, which Jack also goes back to when I think it's the Yeti that basically shoves his face into the mountainside.
Yes, the whole
Shouldn't he
way.
have no face now? I mean, what's going on? I mean, I know I
His
like cartoon,
shoes and his face.
cartoon logic prevails, but even me, I'm like, isn't Jack dead at this point? Doesn't he have like no face on his face? Shouldn't
Maybe
that
he's
be
a
taking
robot
him back
too.
down to his fucking skeleton? I mean, he should be seeing his skull through through his deteriorated skin at that point. Anyways, just I even that that felt like the cartoon logic was pushed a little too far for me. I would like to have not seen his face against the Rocky Mountain, and he at least could have been scuffed up. I
Yeah.
mean, his robe is in tatters. He
Mhm.
should have some scrapes on his face or something.
No,
Too
man,
hard to animate,
that
probably.
where he makes his money. That's all money maker right
Yeah,
there. You
that's right.
can't
That's the
scratch up
money
Jack's
maker.
face.
I
Yeah.
understand. He's got a
Now,
magic incantation protecting his face, maybe.
much like the Scotsman has runes in his sword and it can't
That's
be
right. They
broken,
might have
he's got
ruined
runes
his
in his
face.
face.
They
It
ruined his face, R-U-N-E, so they wouldn't ruin his face, R-U-I-N.
That's a t-shirt right there, Rob. Uh,
I don't know who would buy that t-shirt, Julie.
I would
Okay,
wear
well,
it.
yeah, I got one sale. I got one
We
sale
got
so
one
far.
sale, 35.99. So as we start to wind down here, man, I loved all 3 of these episodes in particular, man. Like I said, the Monks episode is in my top 5 episode of all time. Both Monks episodes are in my top 5 of all time. Um, when you sit back and you think about Samurai Jack, man, and your time on Samurai Jack helping Gandhi,
Hmm.
going to these board pitches, is there one, I asked you the same question about Mina and My Life as a Teenage Robot. Is there one word, one sentence, one phrase that can encapsulate your time on Samurai Jack? Or what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Samurai Jack?
Oh my, I don't know. That's a good question. Um, uh, Goofing off, basically,
Mhm. Yeah, I like it.
which I didn't do a ton of, but like because we had a rather generous schedule and sometimes we didn't either we had too much time or we didn't have anything to work on. My office for a long time was right next to well, I think was it Alvarez's office? I think it was Alvarez's office. It was either Alvarez's office or Randy's office
Hmm.
because we were the two timers. And either Alvarez was always going into Randy's office or Randy was always going to Alvarez's office. And whenever I heard them in there, I would go over and with the three of us, along with Colette Sunderman sometime, who was worked in records, we would just all shoot the shit for a long time. Uh, and and uh, and talk in there for hours on and
Yeah.
sometimes or at least for an hour and then go back to work or whatever. So I remember that specifically. That was very distinctive thing that I did while I was working on Samurai Jack was goof off with Robert Alvarez and Randy Myers a lot in that office. It had these very strange. Cartoon Network has is a very strange building in terms of the offices. They were just kind of put in there in weird
Hmm.
ways. And these offices we shared, they were kind of like, if you looked at them from above, they were kind of like, I don't know, they were like kind of like, you know what they look
Partitioned?
like? They look like those monks upside down, which was like they were kind of a little
Yeah.
narrower at where the doors were, and then they got a little bit wider, and then they were squared off. So we kind
Mhm.
of both had these very narrow spaces with a tall ceiling, but the ceiling was open. So like the I even if I didn't want to goof off, if they were in there together talking, I would just hear everything anyway. So it was kind of
Yeah.
like I couldn't get anything done. I might as well just go over there and actually talk with them because our offices were kind of narrow. We were close together, and the way the sound traveled in that particular part of the building, it just like bounced off the ceiling and went right back down to my office. But like, there's so many weird. If you, I'm guessing you never made it to Cartoon Network or was in the building, but it was just such a weird building was
Hmm.
just weird. Every space was unique and different, and like all these offices were just kind of thrown in there, kind of in just kind of a random design
Yeah.
that didn't really seem to have anything to do with logic or anything. It was just like we need this number of offices, this number of cubicles. We'll put this here, 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 here. So it was it was fun. It was a lot of fun and a great building to work in. But the spaces were weird. The spaces
Yeah.
were very weird.
I can imagine. This is the last question I'll ask you tonight, man. Did Robert Alvarez ever take you in his DeLorean for a ride? Did you ever get to go in
N-
it?
no, I
No.
never got to go in his DeLorean,
Damn it,
unfortunately.
Robert. Roll it out. Get Rob
I
a
don't,
ride.
like he didn't drive that to work as far as I knew. If he
No.
did, I don't know why he never let me get in it, for Christ's sake. There's someone else in animation who had a DeLorean too, but I never got into that one either, unfortunately.
Well, maybe we can scratch that off your bucket list today. Robert Alvarez, if you still listen to my show, hook Rob
Alvarez
Renzetti
is
up here with a ride.
retired. He didn't come, I mean, I'm basically working on my house. I don't see a lot of people these days. So yeah, no, I think I missed my chance. He still has DeLorean, is that right?
I
Okay.
think so. I haven't talked to him in quite some time. I know said he was taking it out once a month, or twice a month, something
I'm
like that, just
assuming
to
he has
start
to
it and
be.
get the oil
Yeah,
going and make
keep
sure
it
everything
going.
was going. But yeah, I haven't talked to him in some time. Um, like I said, Rob, man, it's always a pleasure to get to talk to you. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, go and check out the first two episodes that Rob and I did with Me and the Count and My Life as a Teenage Robot. I know you're working on Big City Greens, so you can't talk about that too much, but stay tuned. Big City Greens coming back out. So
Yeah. I'm
Rob's
also
got his
still
name
working
attached to
on
this.
my trilogy of books. The Horrible Bag series is the third book. The third book's coming out in August. It's called The Cursed Cloak of the Wretched Wraith. And you can guys can check that out. You can pre-order if you like. But yeah, that's going to be out in August, and I don't have a cover for it yet. Unfortunately, I don't have. Wait, do I?
What day in August, Rob?
I think it's the 12th. So they say,
Damn
oh,
it, you're
this is it. Look, why? What's
one
wrong
day
with the
off.
12th?
August 13th is my birthday. One day off.
Ah, well, you can get here's a printout of what the
Oh,
cover
that's really
will look
nice.
like. So that's
I've got the first two. I really dig them.
oh great. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you. Thank you for buying them. This one's coming out next.
Right
So
on.
yeah, Curse Cloak of the Wretched Wraith will be out in August, August 12th, I think is the current date. So yeah, I'm working on that. And you can anybody who wants to catch up with what I'm doing, I'm on Blue Sky now. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, and I have my own website, robrenzetti.com. You can find out anything you like. Sign up for my newsletter if you like. I did a teenage robot story,
Hmm.
which you can access through my newsletter. So lots of things you can find out about me if you're so inclined.
Absolutely. And all those links will be down below. So, ladies and gentlemen, point, click, and go tell Rob hi and tell him what you liked about his work, man. Rob, like I said, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, man. He's been Rob. I've been Julian. It's been the Cartoon Chronicles podcast, and this has been another piece of your childhood. Good night.